V back here for another match preview as decimated Spurs go up to Molineux tomorrow. 12:30 kickoff against Wolverhampton Wanderers is going to be a very difficult game. We've got the match preview for you today. We've got the predicted lineup for you, which is going to be very interesting. And then we'll call it a day. But in terms of the match preview, let's look at let's start off with what is actually going on because there's a lot to get through. I mean, Maddison, he says, we're not going to probably see him again this year. The same with Mickey van de Ven. We're going with a suspended Romero and Destiny Udogie. Richarlison's out as well. In terms of the positive news, Pedro Porro looks like he's going to make it. Ben Davis looks like he's going to make it. And it's a sorry state of affairs when we're so desperate to see Ben Davis play. As much as, he always gives his all, he's just nowhere near the quality of Destiny Udogie, is he? So I think it's a massive plus that he's fit, to be honest, and a massive plus that Pedro Porro is fit. But that brings who's going to play centre-back, who's going to play the creative role, which we'll get onto in a minute. But there's a lot of questions to answer, isn't there?
Lots of questions for Ange to deal with, considering his team selection in this one. I think the whole season, the first 11 has pretty much picked itself, barring maybe, the odd change for Richarlison or Brennan Johnson pretty much has been the only real decision in our starting 11. Every single position, when you look at our starting 11, has been so solid and everyone's pretty much got the role in terms of our starters. And in one game, we've lost 5 starters in one game, which is crazy to think about how quickly things can change in football. Now we go into this game against Wolves, who, to be fair, have picked up some good results at home, beat Man City, they drew recently with Newcastle 2-2. They gave Liverpool a very tough game. I think Liverpool needed a late winner to beat them at the Molineux as well. So we can now go into a game against Wolves, which is going to be incredibly difficult with 5 starters missing. But this is where I guess managers a lot of the time earn their money. They got to find solutions, find replacements. And the one thing for sure that we know is going to happen is Ange isn't going to change the way he's playing. He's not going to adjust his system just because he got players missing. He's going to put the players in and they're going to have to adapt to the way Postecoglou wants to play. And part of me feels like, yes, it's devastating that these players are missing, and it's going to be a big hammer blow, especially people like Van de Ven and Maddison, who really accelerate the structure and the process that we're going for. But hopefully these players coming in see it as an opportunity to impress and try and earn their spot, and gives allows these fringe players to feel more important in the team. And if we can get them playing to a certain level as well, that's only going to benefit us long term. So as much as it's devastating these players are out, and I'm sure it will hurt us, especially when we're playing better teams, hopefully like this weekend, when they get the opportunity, they can stake a claim for the first team, and that's how they got to see it.
Yeah, definitely spot on, to be honest. But look, let's look at the form of the two clubs. Wolves, up and down form, to be honest, but I have been impressed with the way Gary O'Neill has set them up, especially in the bigger games, like you mentioned, getting positive results. Can we really take too much into account of the Spurs form going into it with the injury problems that we got?
Obviously the form doesn't mean much because it's going to be a very different team, but I think the confidence in the camp will still be going into this game thinking we can win the game. I don't think the players will be going into the game being scared about the players missing. They'll be confident that we're still playing well the way we're playing, and that the way Ange will set us up, it will be to try and win the game, no doubt about it. So obviously it's going to be a different team, but we've seen other teams, like, when Brighton have players missing, they find solutions sometimes. They put Gross at right back or whatever, and sometimes it works. Same with Man City. They've also had problems, and albeit they've probably got better depth than us, obviously, but they also, when they got injury problems, can find solutions. So I'm sure Postecoglou will be thinking the same way.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, you saw with Man City when Rodri was out, they lost 3 games, and he's very pivotal to the way they play and so important to them. And that's kind of a similar way how important Van de Ven and Maddison are for us. Maddison, we haven't seen it, correct, but I think that we can safely say, like, without Van de Ven, how do we play this high line, and how do we combat what he's been bringing to us this season with his pace and recovery runs?
Just having more of the ball.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You just got to make sure you're even better going on the ball and going forward, and but there's less room for error on the ball. Essentially, much
less room for error, and with the poorer quality members on the football pitch, like it seems like one ball over the back of Eric Dyer and whoever's partnering him at the back, is going to put us in massive problems. We won't have that recovery pace that Van de Ven brings us.
Yeah, so we got to deal with it. And I understand. I think you're right. Obviously, it's going to affect us, but it doesn't mean we can't find solutions around it. It's going to be difficult, don't get me wrong. And sometimes when you come up against better teams like Man City or even Villa or Newcastle, like the teams near the top of the table, sometimes there's only so much you can do. But I don't think against a team like Wolves that's the case.
I think a massive plus for us, obviously, coming into this game is Pedro Neto was out, because he brings the real star quality that Wolves bring. And I think if Pedro Neto was playing, I probably would say that Wolves have got a lot more of a threat than they do, obviously, without him. And I think I'm much more worried if he was there than not. And I think now the only real threat that they have is Hwang. If you bring up their predicted lineup, we'll get into the head-to-head in a minute, but if you bring up their predicted lineup, you're looking at that team, and apart from Hwang, they don't really have too much that I'm afraid of.
Yeah, Cunha's been in good form, but he's kind of a player who frustrates in the final third. Again, he's very good when it comes to taking people on and being, and his ball progression with his ball carrying ability is pretty strong, especially in the final third. But he won't be, he's not like the best when it comes to, he's very frustrating essentially when it comes to the final third in his decision making at times, and his finishing ability is very much hit and miss. So he's definitely a player who's going to hurt us when it comes to his ability on the ball, but whether he'll actually be decisive, that's another question. Hwang's obviously been banging the goals this season. 6 goals, 2 assists in the Premier League. Obviously an amazing start. I do feel like it's one of those, I think he's a good player, don't get me wrong. I think he's got a good finish, but I feel like it's one of those periods where a player's just going for a purple patch. I don't really think like this is now what Hwang's going to be and he's going to go and get 15 goals. I would be surprised. I think he's still going to finish this season in and around the 10-goal mark. I don't think he's going to score a bucket load more. I think he's going for a real purple patch at the moment, but he's definitely a player who's in good form, and players in good form with confidence you definitely got to be wary of, and especially up against Heung-min Son, his national teammate. He's definitely going to want to impress for sure.
It's the South Korean derby this weekend, Hwang against Sonny.
As you say, Neto, 100%. He has been, I don't think you can understate how important Neto has been. Because even if you think off the top of my head, some of the goals that Wolves have scored this season, I remember the 2 goals against Man City, literally Neto, both of them, he made both of them. And it wasn't even like a case of him just being at the centre of a team move. He's literally carrying the ball by himself from the halfway line, beating 2 free players and making an opportunity. Same against Liverpool when he created the goal for Hwang, literally carrying the ball from the halfway line by himself and set up the goal for Hwang. Against Newcastle, he got an assist for the first goal as well before going off injured. So Neto, he's like reminiscent of like when Spurs were a one-man team with Gareth Bale back in that season. Like they are really relying on him, and I think it told last week. They missed him for the first game and they lost away at Sheffield United, and I think that goes to show how much of a miss he's going to be for them.
Neto has got 7 assists this season. That's a crazy number in this Wolves team. 7 assists and 1 goal, when Hwang has got 6 goals and 2 assists, I think it was. And I mean, like, that alone is like probably like 80%, if not more, of what the Wolves' goals this season.
Yeah, but it's more, for me, it's more about the eye test and what I'm seeing. For example, like Haaland's obviously got loads of goals, but doesn't mean Man City are solely relying on Haaland. You could take Haaland out of City, they'll still find a player who scores goals. Neto is literally doing things by himself without any help. He's literally beating players by himself and creating goals.
Against top quality opposition as well.
Exactly, absolutely. And so without him, I think they're going to struggle to, because the way they play, especially how they played against Man City and against Liverpool and against Newcastle, which I envisage is probably how they're going to set up against us, is they're going to be very aggressive. They're going to be looking for quick transitions and they're looking to attack the space that Spurs leave. And when you got Neto there, who's in the form that he's in, that makes him a really dangerous threat, because he is so good when taking people on and breaking into that space, and he's really recovered well from that injury now. He looks like back in top form. His pace looks unbelievable, but without him, I'm looking at that team and I was like, how are they going to attack the space as effectively as they have been? Hwang isn't that sort of player in terms of his pace. Cunha is quite pacey, but I thought
Hwang was a bit pacey though.
He's pacey, but he's not Neto level. He's not going to really break the lines like Neto is. I'm struggling to see where that threat is from the same level is going to come from. Not to say I'm sure they will create a couple of chances, but they started with Kalajic last game. Now he's a player who's very different profile to what they've been playing in their front line in the past few weeks. Kalajic is very tall. I think he's like 6'5".
Big, tall, strong, aerial
big, tall,
ability.
strike, exactly. Good hold up play. So it brings a different element, a different different threat. But Neto has been so central to them that there's basically no replacement for him, essentially. And I'm not saying they're now going to not be able to attack at all, but I don't see them being anywhere near as effective on the counter without him than with him.
But on the flip side of that, there's no replacement for us, for the likes of someone that can do it to the same level of James Maddison, someone that can do it to the same level of Mickey van der Ven. We've got our own, no one that can do it on the same level of Destiny Adoji, no one that can do it to the same level of Kuti Romero. We've got our own problems to deal with as well.
I would argue it's easier to manage a defensive situation than replace the talent going forward. I think. So look, you can put a makeshift defense together, and obviously it's not going to be the same level, and especially if it's on a consistent basis over the long term, you're gonna suffer for it. But I think in a short space of games, I think you can put a makeshift defense together and get a kind of solid competitive performance out of it, rather than when you take a player like Pedro Neto, who's so central to their attacking play. They just don't have that quality coming off the bench to provide that threat. So how are they going to attack the space in the same way? I agree. We're not going to be able to defend in the same with the way we defended with Van der Ven. It's going to be a lot harder to do. But at the end of the day, a defense's job is just to keep the ball out of the back of the net, and that's a lot easier to coach in a short space of time than replacing the kind of quality that Neto leaves out, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I hope so. But I mean, it's going to be, I know they've been on the training ground and they've been learning this way ever since Andrew's come in. But, Eric Dyer, ever since coming out the team, he hasn't really been playing in the high line, because he more or less, he was playing the last couple of seasons, playing a really low block football in a Conte and Mourinho system. Is he going to be able to take to it like a duck to water? We've got players like, who's going to play alongside him? Is it going to be Emerson? Is it going to be Ashley Phillips? If Ashley Phillips comes in, is he going to be overawed by the occasion? Can he come in and do it straight away? He's going to be coming up against Premier League players at the end of the day, which he's never come up against that kind of quality before, Ashley Phillips. So look, it's a dangerous game, and Wolves is always a tough game, no matter who they have on the pitch. We always find it difficult, especially at Molineux. It's a very, very tough ground to go to. So I am worried, but the one thing that gives me a bit of hope is the comments from Invert the Wing this week on social media. He says that Spurs are going to batter Wolves.
I'd love to believe that. I do think it's going to be a close game, whatever happens. I can't see it being won by more than a goal or two, maybe two if we're lucky, but I don't see a battering here. Wolves are just very strong defensively. And especially if you give them something to hold on to, like Man City did, although Liverpool did, and they were able to turn it around. But like Man City did, I
don't even think they've been that strong defensively this season, to be honest. Like, they've conceded 19 goals already this season.
Yeah, but I get that's true. And but I'm looking at the games against the big teams. I know they lost 3-1 to Liverpool, but again, Liverpool needed to score in the 90th minute. They drew 2-2 with Newcastle, where that penalty was completely unfair that they got given away from given to Newcastle. That shouldn't have been given. And then obviously Man City at home, that was a really good defensive display, even though they got dominated. I think they had one shot on target and won the game 2-1, but it was a really good counter-attacking display and really good solid defensively. Man City found it really hard to create good quality chances, so they have it in them to be very solid and aggressive defensively for sure.
Yeah, and that's what worries me a bit when you're looking at the big teams that have gone to Wolves this season. Like you said, they've beaten Man City. They drew to Villa with 10 men. I'm not sure when that sending off was. I think it was at in the last minute of the game. They drew with Newcastle. But having said that, since Pedro Neto's been injured, they went to Sheffield United and gave them their first win of the season. So I guess that's something to be positive about.
Yeah, I think that was also a bit different because Sheffield United is obviously their game plan was going to be the opposite to what Wolves want.
Yeah.
So Wolves dominated possession in that game. They were the ones asked to break down Sheffield United, and they kind of struggled in that department to do that. Obviously, this is going to be much more to their liking. But again, without Pedro Neto, I just don't see they've just been very effective breaking on the counter attack with his pace and dribbling ability, and without him, like he's almost like I've used this phrase a few times, but he's almost been like a bit of a cheat code for them this season in terms of how he's been able to counter attack, and he's been near on him. Like no defender's been able to stop him this season. That's how good he's been, and without him, they don't have anyone who's like no one's been able to stop. They just don't have that. Has he
got the most assists out of everyone in the Premier League this season? I think he does.
I think so.
7 assists is mad,
incredible.
But I'm very...
Also set pieces as well. I think he's got a few assists.
I'm very happy. Well, I'm not happy he's out because I don't like to see players injured, but I'm happy we're not going to have to face him this weekend, that's for sure. But if you look at the head-to-head between the two clubs, Spurs winning it 3-2 in the last 5 games. We did lose last year. Was it 1-0 at Molineux?
Adama Traore scored in the last
that was it, bloody Adama Traore. But it's a game that, is usually split by the odd goal, as you can see here. Do you see it being the same this weekend?
For different reasons, but yes, I do see it being the same this weekend because I think Spurs obviously trying to manage the injury situation. I still think we're going to play our game, and I don't think...
Of course we will.
I don't think the structure is going to massively break down in possession. I still think we should be pretty good on the ball and should be able to take the game to Wolves and open them up a few times. But if we do create chances and aren't clinical in front of goal, then that will give Wolves a lot more hope. And then all of a sudden, a mistake or a bit of quality from Wolves, and that could cost us the game. So we just got to make sure that in front of goal we're clinical. But I definitely think the way Wolves set up, and I envisage them setting up in this game, I don't see it being a goal fest by any stretch, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't see us keeping a clean sheet either, to be honest, though.
I wouldn't be surprised if we do, just because Wolves, I think their attacking threat without Neto is that much worse that I think that I'm not saying we should be comfortable, don't get me wrong, I can even see them creating chances, but they're not so clinical without him. They're not even with him, they're not that clinical, but without him, especially, like... They got Kalajic, Hwang, Cunha, who are all good players, but I don't see them as players who the defenders we have can't manage in a way.
I mean, who did Dyer manage well last season? He had a shocking season throughout.
Yeah, but he's had good games before in his career, hasn't he? It's not like his whole career's been bad.
Look, he came on and did a good job against Chelsea. He did, but I mean, it's when we kind of put our trust in him and he has to play a long stretch of games where he comes unstuck a bit. Maybe because it's his first game, he can pull out one of those performances again, but I am worried about the long term for sure. But in this game, look, I do think we can go to Wolves and win. We have to go to Wolves and win because our games after this just get harder and harder and harder. So when you're looking at over the next 4 or 5 games, this is the one where you think this is our easiest game. If over the next 5 games, we have to go there and win this weekend, don't we?
Yeah, 100%. But in a way, also, these injuries has brought back that underdog kind of mentality, hopefully. And maybe that can give a bit of impetus to this team.
A bit of siege mentality.
Together. Yeah, a bit of siege mentality. Because I'm not saying we've been getting ahead of ourselves or anything, but... Obviously,
we've been getting ahead of ourselves.
Look, things have been going very well, haven't they, in the first 10 games? Top of the league.
Yeah.
Everyone's been delighted with how things are going. And all of a sudden, it's like we expect wins all of a sudden. But with these injuries, people are starting to get worried again. They're starting to get concerned about, worried about where the results are coming from. So hopefully... where people are starting to doubt us again, that's where we can, pull together and it's going to be a massive result now if we get a win. Whereas if these injuries didn't happen, obviously it wouldn't be great away at Wolves, but wouldn't be seen as like a massive result. But now if we win, all of a sudden it's a big result again. Yeah,
another factor that not many people are talking about as well coming into this game, with the likes of Maddison and Cuti Romero out, you're looking at it and the leaders that we've had all over the pitch have now gone. No leader in the back line. Well, you can maybe consider Dyer as a leader because he has been in the past, but he hasn't been recognised as a leader this season. You're looking at Maddison, who's been so influential for us as a leader, as well as what he's done on a football pitch. That's been gone. Obviously, Sonny's still there, the captain of the club. But are you worried about that lack of leadership going into this weekend?
Yeah. What can I say? That's not a good thing that that the leaders aren't in the game. Hopefully, obviously they're not going to be on the pitch, but we have experienced players like Dyer. Maybe if one of Højbjerg maybe starts, or he's going to be in the squad anyway as well. You've got experience in Basuma, who's been one of the leaders in the group since this season as well. Is it a concern? Yes. Is it something that we can point to and say that's going to cost us points? I don't think that should be an excuse. But yeah, I think it's not a good situation for sure, but it shouldn't be something we can look to say the reason why we will drop points is because of their quality, not because of their leadership, is what I would say.
Yeah, you're probably right, to be honest. But if you just bring up this injury graphic and just visualize how bad the situation is right now, look at that. Just look at that.
It's a pretty good team, that.
It's mad. We've pretty much got a full 11 of injured players. They're even like goalkeepers like Alfie Whiteman and stuff not even on this list. But, I mean, we have proper been decimated. Proper. Yeah. And like Ange said in his press conference, in his whole 25 year of management, he's never seen a whole team wiped out within the space of one game.
Yeah, and it is crazy how quickly things can change, and I think it's a lesson to everyone in terms of how
never get too comfortable.
Exactly. And also what we were saying about in the summer about the need to reinforce some of the positions, because these things can happen, and now we're staring in the face of Van der Ven, who our worst nightmare, being out for a long time. Same with Maddison as well, and Romero missing 3 games. We all said there's a big chance he'll get a suspension at some point this season, and here it is. So we've only got ourselves to blame for the lack of cover, to be honest, that we have. But look, these things happen, and it's up to the managers to try and find a solution. Now, the difference between, I would say, Ange and Conte is Conte was very much reliant on the individual ability for a lot of positions for his system to work. I don't think Ange is as reliant for his system to work. What I would say is, though, the fact that he's got Maddison and Van der Ven there has really accelerated the process we've been going through in terms of how well his structure has been implemented because of these players. But it doesn't mean that it can't work without them, and I do think it can.
I hope so. I really hope so. But I do think we've been very reliant on those two players specifically, as well as Romero. And I don't know. Look, like I said, I think we can go into this game with a bit of confidence and to go and get 3 points at Wolves, especially without Pedro Neto. But it is what happens after that